Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the amazing podcast, Awaken Entrepreneur Revolution, with Jana Nixa and me, Judith Junke. And we want to take you straight into another juicy topic today, which is sales. If you did catch last episode, we wandered off and dove deep into the messaging and the copy and also tipping toes into sales. And today we're going to take you beyond that. And we want to dive really deep into what it is that we've experienced ourselves, but also in our audiences and with clients that keep people from actually making the sale, which is a lot about how you have the capacity and build faith and trust in yourself and confidence on really holding space within a conversation or even going live. We're going to go into all of the juicy details where potentially you already also have experienced resistance in really going there, potentially having results like not the amount of sales that you would like. So I love already having this conversation. Jana, how are you doing today?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing great, Judith. Thank you so much for asking. And of course, we're talking about one of my favorite topics that so much gets misunderstood, but for good reason, because there's a lot of sales models out there, we'll say, that really do turn people off and really do feel sleazy and salesy and all of the things. So, for anybody that when I say the word sales, they feel that tightening potentially in their abdomen or their sacral area. It's something I think we've all been little t traumatized with in one way or another, been in conversations where we're like, oh God, get me out of here. Oh, sort of things where people are trying to push their agenda on you in one way or another, right? And so I wanted to start this off, Judith, talking about just quick little story. I was on a group coaching call yesterday, and it was asked by a podcaster. Like, he was just curious, what is the biggest reason that you go on podcast, right? And so he couldn't figure out if it was visibility or to get leads. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a really great way to differentiate between marketing and sales, because people think that they're one and the same, or they think sales is just something that's optional, but it's just really pushy and I have to force, but it's actually not. It's actually having a place that you're gently guiding people to. Whereas visibility is marketing, right? Like, oh, that's nice. Oh, I like that, right? So his whole thing was, why do people go on podcasts? And it was really interesting conversation, because what my answer was, being more of that sales minded, is while, yes, I love the visibility, I love to spread my message out there. And, I'm sure everybody here knows I love to talk. However, if there's not any sort of method or process to that if anybody actually wants more from me, that if I'm not taking them in that direction, at the end by, telling them where they can find me, having a freebie to offer, having some sort of sales, there it is, sales funnel that I'm going to then invite the right people to, the visibility, all while it feels wonderful, is not going to affect your bottom line. And so while one, so to try to differentiate, and yes, you can have both. And this is where they both come in and why it's so important that we don't just have our beautiful message, that we don't just shout it out and get everybody excited, but then we also go, hey, come on with me. If you want to learn more, come on over, not buy my program, but let's start a relationship. Right. And so, but it was really interesting to hear, because, a lot of the newer coaches like visibility. And I was like, listen, you can be so visible, but if your message isn't aligned and there's no clear call to action, it will just be one of those conversations like we've all heard on a podcast and be like, oh, that was really cool. I like her. The end. And so that, in a nutshell, was just, from a more sales-minded person, how I would differentiate the two of those things. But it was really interesting that so many were like, I just want the visibility. But if we don't have a plan, and if there's not a high converting funnel on the back end, and I don't mean, let me be clear when I say converting. Converting doesn't just mean enrolling clients. Converting means they say, yes, I want the free thing, or yes, I want to follow this person, or yes, I want to know more. That is a conversion. Okay. And so that is what we have to put into and weave into, to kind of touch on last week, our marketing message, whether it's in copy, whether it's, on a podcast. We have to weave that in there so that people know how to take the next step. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on that. But I wanted to really start to paint a picture of marketing. Yes, messaging is beautiful on the front end, but if it's not coupled with that sales piece of it, it's like a lot of those people, maybe you're doing this. It's like 3 tips for yada, yada, yada. And they're like, why are people buying my stuff? Because there's no sales component here. You haven't put in that, you haven't weaved that into your tips, right? And so when people are like, I don't understand why I'm not getting more engagement or clients from my content, it is because that element is missing, most likely, or your messaging is off to your ideal client. But anyways, I'm going to shut up now.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the podcast guesting example to showcase that. I can agree on everything that you say. I want to just add a few things on that one, which is really about the intention part and the clarity about the journey that a potential client takes in your world. And that really starts what you just said, right? The first conversion is them either deciding to follow you on whatever social media, or even opting in to be on your email list because they saw value in the free offer, or even just opted in to receive email notifications from you, right? And the whatever you're sharing on your newsletters or your regular emails. And that is the first opt-in, but that is also part of the sales process, right? That is part of the conversion of all of that. But in order for people to take that step, you got to be explicit about what it is that they will get. And this is also where this is not messaging anymore. Messaging is really about what am I about? What is my world about? What do I stand in the space for? What is important to me? What is my values? Give them the clear picture about what your world looks like. Even better when you go on speaking formats, and that can be podcast guesting is amazing. I love doing that, right? I've been on, I don't know how many podcasts, like 50, 60 over the last years as guests. And I've even signed clients, like one-on-one clients, high ticket, just from them having listened to a podcast episode where I was a guest, right? I mean, it can be that powerful once you master telling your own story and describing the world, but then giving them a clear path on, okay, if this was resonating, if you want more, if you want to understand how you can get there, this is the product, this is the thing, right? This is what you need to do next. If this is you, tell them. And this is where the sales part comes in, right? And this is where we want to dive in a little bit, because I agree to what you say. Some people don't have the full awareness around it, or even if they have the full awareness of that, they feel the inner resistance of actually doing it. And this is where we're talking about self-expression again, and the certainty. And I'm even going as far as saying audacity. Have the audacity to speak about what you got to offer with pride, right? Be there, love it, love what you do. Not only your purpose, not only the message that you're sharing, not only the beautiful things you're going to change in the world, but also love the thing that you're offering, your one-on-one, a group, whatever it is, right? A retreat. It doesn't matter. Be proud about it, and lovingly share about these things, inviting people to come closer. Tell them, come on over, have a look, right? And they can decide. You're not pushing them, you're inviting them. That maybe might be a game changer in the first step when you look at marketing and sales, which is then the awareness and maybe a shift in perspective of how you look at these things, so that you don't have physical reactions anymore when you hear the word sales, which might be either in your stomach or maybe your jaw clenches or whatever that is, where you got this, I can't, I don't want to, I resist. Can't it be easier? All the interesting thoughts that we have. Maybe we want to dive a little bit into the resistance parts and some examples on how we can shift, or what has helped you, Jana, to get to that point. And I definitely have something to share from, as we both have very strong sales backgrounds, even though it was corporate environment, but there were a few things that were so ingrained in me just because I had been doing it for such a long time. And it was a lot of cold approaching people. But you learn so much when you do that. And this is the core of the game hasn't changed. Just the way how you deliver it has evolved, right? And maybe we want to dive a little bit into this.
Well, the first shift that I'm offering that I heard you say so beautifully is it is an invitation, right? It's nothing more. And the more we or you or our listeners, anyone can get in touch with their own value, right? So, I'll just use myself as an example here. But, I spent over 2 decades in the sales world, trained with probably some of the best trainers in the world. And, who knows how much I've invested of my own money in my own development and all of these things. So I would really encourage each and every one of you to start with your own value. And so just like I kind of did, like, do your own laundry list of, how you've learned it, how you've earned it, how you've invested, what is it that you're offering somebody else that, you've spent decades and a ton of money, or in one way or another, investing in on yourself, that now you get to turn around and offer this beautiful gift to the right person and say, I can save you time. I can save you money. Here's what I've packaged up based on my values and what I've learned that I can now help you with, in where you are to get to where I am or to where you want to go. Right. And so when we look at it, you're not trying to do this thing to get them to do this thing, but each and every one of you that's a coach, an entrepreneur, we have a gift to give. Some of that's been earned, some of that's innate, but to really start with stepping into that empowerment is so huge, because the biggest reason that people feel salesy is because they're holding a lot of fear around, do you want my thing? Can you buy my thing? And there's a lot of fear in there, instead of, this is what I have, this is what I do, this is how I've learned it, this is how I've earned it, I am offering it to you. And, if it's the right decision, great. And another little trick I'll just say, and if it's not, that's good too. And you lean out and, hold space for them to make that decision, and with pure neutrality. But the more you can really look yourself in the mirror and own and say, no, damn it, I do have an incredible thing here, right? And stand in that, then you up your, it's kind of like going pro in a way, like you up your empowerment around who you are and what you do, so that it's it doesn't need to be salesy. It doesn't need to be convincing. It's just making an offering. And so I guess that would be the first shift that I would offer everybody here, is own your value. You shouldn't push, convince, or have to manipulate anybody with fear to work with you. You're better than that. You have far more to offer than that.
Yeah, that's true. I love that, because that is the first barrier potentially, when we don't fully believe that we are whatever it is for everyone individually, but on some level that we are worthy to receive that we are worthy, good enough, whatever it is, to be shouting from the rooftops about these things, standing in our own power, right? And then, so that is the first thing, to even start talking about it in a way. Another thing that I realized and saw with my clients a lot is really when it actually comes to a conversation. Even if you say for higher ticket offers, you will have at some point a Zoom call or whatever, or even a phone call, but you will have a conversation with that person one-to-one to understand what they're actually looking for, what they're struggling with, how what you offer might potentially help them, and how then together you could solve that for them over time period X, right? Few months, half a year, whatever it is that you offer. And for that is one thing where I needed to understand where people were stuck when I started out teaching this part, because for me it came naturally, just because I was at that point, not because it came naturally to me from when I was little, but because I had been in the corporate sales world for a decade. And even before that, when I was studying, I had every and any kind of interesting sales job in the world. I did even sell phone or internet contracts via the phone. So, I have had the most interesting conversations, but that meant I've had, I don't know how many hundred reference points of having a conversation with somebody and learning. So there is a high baseline that I already had to have learning experiences and understanding of, okay, if I move the conversation in that way, it turns this way. Oh, but if I'm kind of showing up this way, I'm not taking it there, right? To have that self-awareness of, okay, the way that I show up, the way that I ask a question, the way that I have a capacity to listen and to see the other person, hear what they say, see what they look like if I have video, right? Even if I only have phone and the tone, hear in their voice what they are saying in between the lines, the things that they are not saying. And this is the ability and the capacity that I'm inviting you guys to develop, because that is your success factor number one. If you can master that, and that means overcoming your own fear of the mind coming up and saying, oh, but what if I don't know what to say if the person says that, right? And this is when all your mind starts going into these scenarios of bringing you into a position where you don't feel confident anymore. But the thing is, the only way to overcome that is to start doing it and practice it, right? If you've done it once or twice, it will still feel a bit weird. If you've done it more than 100, 150 times, probably like I have, I guess it's even more. I have never counted, right? It becomes natural at some point and you become faster. And then obviously also you can add like psychological things, if you know a little bit about what kind of emotions represent something, or what kind of a behavior of somebody, when somebody starts to hesitate, or if you listen to how their voice might change around a certain topic, then you will know, oh, this might be a pain point for them. You might want to go a bit deeper in that one in a kind way, right? In a loving way. But that is giving you a clue of, oh, maybe I should ask another question around this topic that just came up. And this is the whole ability to hold space, but to be able to listen and stay in your own energy and guiding them, because that is essentially what they are looking for when they come into your world. When you are a coach or service provider in any way, they want you to guide and lead them along the way. So if in the sales conversation, they already have the impression that you can't hold space even in that conversation for 20 or 30 minutes, it might get hard to really find an agreement in the end.
Oh my gosh, so many good things, so many things that you're going like, oh, I want to say that. Oh. And the first thing I didn't hear you say was a script. And so while it's super important to have a guide, right? Oh, not a script, but a way that you're hoping to guide somebody through this conversation. I like to think of it as a framework, but it's certainly not, let me make sure I say these things, because hear me when I say this. 93% of communication is nonverbal. So what does that tell you? It's not about getting the script right or saying the right thing, or like Judith was saying, getting up in my head, like, oh, did I get that right? Did I say that right? Yes, it's about being able to manage that fear so that, again, you can be from that place, that point of neutrality, and actually hear them. Something I used to see way back in the sales world, and then working with clients now when I'm looking at their actual discovery calls, is they're not listening. They're waiting to talk. Like, okay, she's going to say that. I want to hear what okay. And so when we get in that place, we're not really fully seeing the person, right? Our ego's trying to step in and go, okay, if they said that, then let me make sure that I say this so that I can say that. And, all of these things. And, even for me, it's a practice. The more awareness and space you have, like, so many things you said, I'm like, ooh, I would love to. And then I'm like, no, let's just hear where she is. And then when it's your turn, we'll see how it all flows out, right? But we can't constantly be up in our head. We want to be in our heart so that we can really, and this is another biggie, write this down, because people want to be seen, heard, and validated. And if you're up in your head trying to get it right, to make sure that you say the thing to get them to do the thing, you're not in the energy of flow, of neutrality. There's attachment there, which brings in that fear. which that is typically what makes that pushiness come in. One little quick story. So back when I was in the sales world, I was a mentor and trainer. And not one time, many times I would see where, I'm standing there sort of observing the call, and the rep would see that they're starting to lose the attention of the person for whatever reason. And so then they step more into fear, like you're talking about, right? Like, oh shit. Okay, I'm losing it. Okay. And then they would just start like word vomiting. Well, how about this? And I can do this. And you could just see like it just fell apart because it's not how you show up in the first quarter. It's how you're able to hold your own in that fourth quarter. And that's where I see a lot of people, as soon as that person starts to pull away, if you can't hold that space for them and you leave that room for fear, then that's when the salesy, pushy, desperate energy seeps in. And so, like you said, it is such a process of doing it, but it's also a process of learning with a coach, perhaps, how to manage those things in the moment, because there are tricks and there are ways for you to stay in your power and to hold that line, that center line, and stay in your heart and be of service to that person. It is possible. And when you are in that space, there's nothing salesy about it. It is just, I am, like you said, I love the word, a guide. And I am here as a neutral advisor, helping you make the best decision. And I'll include one little tip here as I wrap up this little section. And that is, I always set the attention for the highest good for all before every call, before every meeting, before anything. Because if I can stay in that headspace, it brings in a huge element of surrender and trust. And that can dissolve that egoic, forceful control, pushy, salesy pattern that
I love
so
that.
many often. All right, I'm done. Hey, y'all, I'm a sales coach. So of course I'm going to have a lot to say about this. But anyways, yes.
I love that tip. It's amazing. I was just going to throw in a little hack as well to counterbalance. It's something that when you are the leading person in the conversation, because you have somebody coming into your world and being curious about what that would look like to work with you. One thing I'm using a lot, and that is actually, it's a tactic that is being taught, but it's a really helpful tool for both ends, because for you as the leading person of the conversation, it gives you space, and it provides for the other person that came to you in the conversation a very good sense of being seen, heard, and validated. And it's very simple. After a little while, like one section of the conversation, you just take a little break by saying, let me just summarize and feedback to you what I understood, what you said, and tell me if I heard you right, if I got you correctly, right? So that gives you space to recap what you heard and just verbalize it, play it back to the person. And it's amazing for them as well, because they're like, oh, that person did really listen, or, oh, maybe I need to say this and this in a clearer way. Let's have that conversation. And then again, you are in the conversation. You're not, playing a list of, this is the price list, by the way, and you can have option A, B, C, or D. And if you do D, you can have another C, whatever. It's not that kind of thing where you're being sold as the person that is with you in the call, but is rather really the discussion and the conversation of, okay, that person understands where I'm at. She understands completely what I need and also where I'm stuck. So that is a very simple thing that you can do that provides space for yourself, but just provides for the other person in a very nurturing way. And it builds trust on top of that.
It really does. I love that. And I'm so glad you brought that up. And what you're even doing on that, you're doing that at the seen, heard, and validated level, but it's like a mini close. You're checking in with them, right? Like, did I get that right? Like, I just want to make sure, that I'm picking up what you're laying down. And so it really becomes this process of, guiding them through this conversation, but in a way where they really feel safe, because you're just holding them and really hearing them. And so when you're checking in that way, what it does is it also instills back in you this security of like, they feel it, like they feel really good about this, right? So, all of a sudden when you get ready to present your offer, you have a much better idea of where they stand, because it's just those many little closes, so that it doesn't, you're not saving what some would say the sales for the end. Like you're still, how are you feeling so far? How does it sound? Like, what do and you're just doing those little check-ins, and it makes the so-called sales part, which I don't believe in that, at the end, not quite so, oh God, here we go. Because you really you've been asking all along and checking in. So you kind of have an idea of where they stand, both intuitively, energetically, and potentially, depending on how much they share, even intellectually. You really know, like, okay, they're picking up what I'm laying down. This is working. Like we're jiving. And one last thing I'll say about it to just release even more of that pressure is, I don't know who started calling it a discovery call, but I would like to say, why not put the discovery back in the discovery call? Because again, back to your value and holding that high level, because when you do that, you are dispelling like the neediness goes away, because you're like, no, this is good. And if it's for the right person, it's going to be incredible. But I've got to figure out as much for me as the person making the offer, if you are the right person, as that person. So it's a two-way street. And so that's why I always tell my clients, put that discovery element back into the discovery call, because you're not going to get on every call with your ideal client that you want to work with. And we have to learn how to lean into the highest good for all. And that means you too, right? And so again, holding that value line, because where we can get into trouble outside of I need this to happen is, well, I'm going to work with this person anyway, even though I know that they're not the best person. Like it's not the perfect fit. And so while yes, you may miss out, if you want to call it that, on that sale, all that's doing is telling you and the universe more of what the right person is for you. And for any of you that are listening who have done that, and I've done it, I've done it, it takes you so much more out of your power when you start working with this person, and inevitably they're not picking up what you're laying down, or they're not wanting to do the work, or they're not meeting you, where they're not getting the results that that they could. And so, really like honoring yourself too, I guess, is really what I'm trying to say at the end of the day, because we can't help and work with everybody. And so make it a discovery call for both of you.
I love that. Two things I'm saying to close this episode off. One is that on top of what we just were sharing from kind of the strategic moves you have within the conversation, having your client, your potential client, the person in that call with you in the conversation, having them say yes repeated times also has a psychological effect, right? And it's not to manipulate in the pushy way, because there's different ways how you can play that. But what you want to do is find the fine line in really asking the questions for the reasons we just shared, which will then get you hopefully yeses from their side, yeses of yes, you got that right, yes, you understood, yes, that's exactly what I mean, right? If there's no, or like, which is great, because it gives you the opportunity to ask different questions. But before you put out the final offer, and with that also the investment, when you talk about money, you want all of the ums and nos be gone, and you want them at a space where they at least said 2 or 3 times yes right before you move over to presenting what the actual investment looks like, because that is also psychologically clever, if you want, without manipulating, because you give them, without the pressure, the room to come to that spot, versus you can ask these kind of questions in a pressurized and manipulative way, manipulative in the negative sense if you want, right? And this is, which might get them to the point to say yes out of fear, because they feel pressurized into saying yes, because otherwise whatever would be the consequence, right? They might lose their face or whatever it is. But you want them to come from a place where they genuinely mean yes. and then you go and present the offer. That is for you a great check-in also onto when to move over there. Okay, are they ready to hear it now? And then you present it, which raises the conversion rate really of them signing with you. That is one thing I wanted to say. And the last thing to add to what you were just saying, the discovery call element. This is where like a slight tiny bit of marketing I'm putting in here, because I agree to what you say, and I want to put on, you can check in with yourself and see who exactly is your target audience and what is your style of communication. And then you can decide if you want to go with that word discovery call, or, you know, I know that for me, the sessions are called clarity sessions, because I know that is something that my audience is struggling a lot with. They feel unclear. So by me naming it clarity session, right, this makes it appealing to the audience. But I agree fully to the overall impulse to say you don't have to call it a sales call, or, you know, whatever kind of technical term it is. Find a word that resonates with you, that you also know that your audience has resonance with, and that makes it even more inviting and easy for them to come on it, to understand, well, this is no pressure, this is the conversation we're having, right? So this is the last element.
I want to just say, I'm not calling, I wouldn't ever call it a discovery call for the obvious reasons. What I'm saying is the intention of it is a discovery call. So to your point, I would call it based on their needs, right? Like what they know, what they need. And I would tailor it depending on the conversation, so that you can meet them where they are. But no, the discovery piece, just to clarify, meaning that you're actually discovering each other on that call. Like you're discovering as much if they want to work with you as you are with them, which I think is probably where that word came from originally, but it's just at this point, in my opinion, it's been way overused, and, people sort of just expect to be hard sold to in those situations. So, but just make it the intention on that call to really both feel into each other's energy and not make it about how do I get this person to do what I want them to do kind of thing. So I wanted to make sure I made that clear, because discovery call as a name is probably a little bit generic. We need to be more specific with our clients about what exactly they're going to get by taking time with us, right?
Yeah, I love the clarification. Makes complete sense. Sense. Are we good to wrap it up for today? I feel we've covered a lot of things, like really getting more into the juiciness and summarizing a little bit. I mean, you've heard the tips and some tricks that we shared, right, that you can implement. If there's questions, just let us know. Either follow us on social media or email us. There's an email here in the show notes where you can always reach out and contact us. Leave us a review if you like that. And maybe the overall invitation, shift your perspective around sales and really look at it as the conversation and these inviting elements. And that will just make the whole flow so much more easier also to transition from the marketing end over to the sales end. When you have that full clarity of that journey, it makes it just whole as a total. And that will also help you feel better in that and feel more confident in moving forwards.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening so much. Don't ever forget that you have a gift, that you are here to give. And I believe there's certain people here that are here to receive it. And so coming at it from that space, staying in your heart. And again, we're so glad that you're here following this journey that Judith and I are on. And we just really welcome, any questions, reach out, any topics. We would love to cover, we're all ears. So thank you so much again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Oh, I'm doing it, aren't I? Okay.